What up, folks? As most of you know, I'm making a 3D Mega Man Zero game inspired by some of my favorite franchises, and I've been working on this for a very long time. It's honestly the longest time I've been working on a single project. Naturally, because of this, every now and then, I start to feel a little burnt out. I've been asked a few times, especially during streams, how I handle burnout. So in this video, I'll be covering what I do between sprints with the Zero project. But before we get into that, are you looking to get into programming but having trouble getting started? Fortunately, today's sponsor, Boot.dev, is the perfect place. Boot.dev is an online self-paced learning platform that specifically tackles one of my biggest challenges when I started to learn programming, which was boredom. They achieve this through gamifying their platform to look and feel exactly like playing an RPG. You can gain levels, earn achievements, complete quests, buy monthly boss battles, and there's even a global leaderboard. The platform is designed specifically to jump you straight into writing code, which honestly, what better way to learn how to program than actually by writing code and shipping projects. Through Boot.dev, you can learn Python and Go, which are great picks when learning your first programming language. And they're both used in the industry for back-end programming. Speaking of the industry, according to Stack Overflow, in the US, the median salary for back-end developers in 2023 was over $100,000. The platform also has an AI assistant named Boots, a powerful bear wizard, who can help you out whenever you get stuck on a concept. Boots is trained on each lesson and will ask you questions to help you figure out the lesson, instead of just giving you the answer. So if you're looking for a fun way to code, as well as learning job-ready programming skills in the process, click my link in the description and use code HeyI'mKeely for 25% off your first month, or 25% off your first year if you go with the annual plan. Thanks again to Boot.dev for sponsoring this video. So the main thing that I do when feeling burnt out on a particular project is revisit my old ones. I really enjoy going back into my old projects to gain some inspiration, and sometimes just to finish what I started. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a few of my older projects that I've recently gone back to take a look at. We'll start with my oldest project and the first game I ever finished using Unity, the Crazy 8. TC8 is a 2D fighting game developed for mobile devices. It was my final project with Full Sail University, which in hindsight, kinda wish I didn't enroll, but that's a story for another time. Anyway, I worked on TC8 for about 6 months, and while Full Sail provided the visual and sound resources for the project, I created the UI and the sprites. It took me about 2 weeks per character to make all of their sprites and to set up their code. The combat itself was mostly inspired by Marvel vs. Capcom. Characters have light, medium, and heavy normals, as well as specials with light, medium, and heavy versions that behave differently. Some turn specials into lows or overheads, some turn into launchers. There were also air combos, and I tried to give characters their own specialties based on their specials. This game is no longer available on the market due to a Unity editor update that kind of broke a lot of things, but I learned two main things from this project: scope and optimization. With this being my first full game, I vastly underestimated scope, even though I spent almost 2 months just planning the project and doing documentation. This is because I overestimated my own abilities at the time. As for optimization, I learned very quickly that you have to be careful with the file sizes of your assets. I originally created the sprites far too large, which caused a lot of crashes. These are some things I wish the master's program had actually taught me, instead of the other random stuff we had to do. But I digress. Either way, I really enjoyed working on the project, and I recently went back to update it to a newer version of Unity, which I had to fix even more issues that got broken due to the update, just to see it play on the PS Vita. I mentioned this before, but my biggest reason for getting into game design was because I wanted to make a game for a portable gaming console, which back in 2010 was the PSP. So seeing TC8 running on the Vita was a dream come true for me, and kind of brought some closure to the dream that originally got me into game dev, or at least a sign to me that I was growing as a dev and moving in the right direction. And with more portable gaming devices on the market today, I still want to make something specifically to be played on one of those. Modular was my first attempt at an FPS game. The premise of the game was that Modular was an antivirus program that deleted viruses from your system by allowing the user to take care of the issue themselves by running through their hard drive Doom style and blowing everything up. COD Zombies played a bit of inspiration here because the gameplay loop was to just try to clear as many ways as possible before you would eventually lose. The player has access to different weapon modes that correspond with different enemy types, and matching the color of the weapon to the color of the enemy yields more damage. Each weapon also functioned differently. For example, red was a shotgun and purple was a sniper. Players earn points during each run that they can use to purchase permanent upgrades for each subsequent run, which made the game unintentionally end up being somewhat of a FPS roguelike. which I feel if I had leaned more into that aspect, it could have turned out better than it did. But at the same time, I'm proud of myself for completing the project. I recently went back to this project because I've been having an itch to create another FPS type game. So I went back to this project just to see how I went about setting up some of the mechanics. Vixen was my next large project after TC8. The original plan for this project was to make a third-person shooter that combined run and gun hero shooter mechanics with spellcasting. This was also my first time attempting to make a third-person shooter, so the entire project was a learning process, just like the Zero project is now. This project had multiple playable characters with their own ultimates, which at the time I think I called them X spells, because the premise of the game had something to do with a university that trained spellcasters to hunt down demons or something along those lines. I really can't remember that part, and the game design document was on a hard drive that's no longer with us. RIP. But you see what I was going for. University, X spell, you get it. The way the characters stood out from each other was their stats. Some were more efficient with certain weapons and spells than others. These proficiencies meant things like better weapon handling and accuracy, shorter spell cooldowns and cast times, more damage, etc. Players could have multiple loadouts per character, and there were variations of each spell that had different stats. The plan was to have players earn in-game currency just by playing the game, and they would use this currency to purchase packs where they would try to pull better spells. Spells could also trigger status effects such as light having a flashbang effect, or dark spells causing blindness by limiting your vision. You could also get frozen or set on fire. I got really far with this project and actually reached a point where it was ready for public testing, but I ran into the beast known as netcode. Given that I hadn't been using Unity for that long, netcode proved to be a bigger challenge for me than I expected. I was actually able to create matchmaking and syncing clients locally on the same machine, but when it came to connecting separate ones, I'm going to be honest and say I didn't know much of what I was doing. That said, given how much I accomplished with this project, even though I couldn't finish it, it really helped me grow as a developer. Now for this one. Spaghetti was my first attempt at a horror game, and it was based on a popular meme at the time. The gameplay was also inspired by FNAF. It actually started off as a joke between me and some people at work, and I decided to just do it! The game is simple. Keep the spaghetti warm by slapping it, but you also have to deal with Goldie and the three bears, who each have their own method to avoid. Papa by staring at them, Mama by hiding, Baby by standing still, and Goldie by jumping over the table to avoid her charge. It's a very simple gameplay loop where you just see how long you can last, and it got more popular than I expected, honestly. So I just want to say I appreciate all the support that it got. So 2 years passed where I really didn't work on anything. I actually was considering giving up on game dev entirely. I won't go into details, but in 2018, literally the day after I released Spaghetti 1, I lost someone who meant the world to me, and it hit me pretty hard. When I eventually decided to pick game dev back up, I really didn't know what I wanted to make, so I just went with trying to make a sequel to the first Spaghetti. Unfortunately, I had spent so much time away from game dev that, let's just say, the game has its fair share of issues. This was my first attempt at making a story-based game and trying to build some lore around a meme whose time had long passed. My goal was to take the first game's mechanics and expand them, and for the most part it worked. The switch up caught players off guard who were expecting the game to essentially be like the first one, only to find that it goes beyond the slap the plate mechanic. In the first half of the game, players not only have to keep the food warm, but they also have to make the food themselves, all while still dealing with Goldie and the three bears. The game presents itself as if all you have to do is survive a few rounds and you win, but that's where the twist happens. After completing the rounds, you have to go face to face with Goldie and the three bears. Now for the issues, I'll be the first to tell you, the story is meh. I wanted to make a horror game, but also have the game not take itself so seriously, especially because of the meme that the game was based on. I personally enjoy horror games that incorporate humor into it. A game can be scary and funny at the same time. And then there's the bugs, with the biggest one being a soft lock that only occurred when the game was downloaded from Steam. When testing a local build of the game, the bug never occurred. Not once. It only happens when you play the Steam version. So I released a patch or two to attempt to fix it, and I eventually decided to move on. In hindsight, I learned not to be so hard on myself when encountering certain issues with the games I work on. Primarily because of how often you see large AAA games with $1 million budgets and multiple people working on them that release with worse issues than this. And I'm just a single developer. That said, even with this faults, I was happy to step back into game dev. Next up, Chess 2. This project is how a lot of you found my channel. It's based on a video by Oates Jenkins where they created a version of chess where all the pieces behave differently and even the objective of the game was a bit different. Shout out to Oates Jenkins. This was a fun project to work on mainly because I had to learn normal chess before actually working on it. I won't go into detail on how each piece works because I have a few videos that explain it. And on top of that, there's also Oates' original video that inspired the whole project. What I do want to talk about though is what I consider another big stepping stone in my game dev journey, and that's netcode, the beast that killed the Vixen project. Chess 2 was originally developed to be local multiplayer, but I eventually added online matchmaking, which meant I had to finally learn netcode. And I did. Seeing online play finally work felt like a big accomplishment for me because it loomed over me for so long after dropping the Vixen project due to it. On top of that, it was a very fun project to work on, and I'm thinking about doing a full Steam release for it once I can get things a bit more stable on the netcode side and add a little bit more content. And finally, that brings us back to zero. I started working on this project in December of 2022, and it's been my longest ongoing project since Vixen. I've been pretty much pouring everything I've learned so far into this project, as well as still learning new things while I work on it. Obviously, with how long I've been working on this, burnout is a concern. Going back to my old projects as well as trying out new ideas is what keeps me motivated to work on this, which is why I take time away to work on it and do other things. I use what I learned from the Zero project to try out new ideas in other projects, and then I use what I learned from those other projects to improve the Zero one. It's a cycle that sustains my drive to be a developer, and I really enjoy the process. Also, there are a lot of other smaller test projects that I didn't even mention in this video, partially because I'm considering turning some of those into full games. But that's going to do it for this video. Thanks again to my sponsor, boot.dev, and thank you to my patrons. You all are the real MVPs. Seriously, thank you for your patience and rocking with your boy for so long. Also, check out my website for info on future projects, and the Discord is now live, so swing by and join the crew. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and as always, if you find yourself coming back, how about subscribing? Thanks again for watching this video, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.